I think when it's all said and done, what you're going to see is a huge divide over people who are college educated and not college educated.
Black voters came through for Kamala Harris. White women voters did not. Pure Project 2025 in miniature in Florida. And that kind of extreme, sort of extremist, right-wing, fascist-type government in Florida, does that make it a more attractive place?
Thinking about the people who are not a part of anybody's elite, who are hurting tonight. There are African-American women who know a little bit about being talked down to and know a little bit about having their economic dreams crushed, who tried to dream a big dream over the past couple of months. And tonight they're trading in a lot of hope for a lot of hurt.
Reeling off names of infamous dictators in an unhinged rant.
And we begin our final sprint, having arrived at that point in the election season where basically we on this side of the TV screen have said all we can. We've laid out the stakes in this crucial election, where one side stands for freedom while the other meets the textbook definition of fascism, namely a far-right dictatorial regime like Hitler's Germany or Franco's Spain or Mussolini's Italy, but also white-ruled South Africa before Mandela and the black majority took control, or Vladimir Putin's Russia, Viktor Orban's Hungary, or Nicolas Maduro in Venezuela today, that suppresses the rights of women and minorities, uses the military to execute the whims of a strongman dictator, and controls and suppresses the press, education, the arts, rewrites history to suit a favored and dominant racial class, and foments extravagant corruption in order to enrich the dictator and his friends.
An MSNBC guest then followed up that with a scare campaign suggesting Trump will ban the writing of history books if he's elected.
Michael, you and John and other great historians often talk about hinge days in history, hinge moments in history, and we could go through them all over the last 250 years in this country. This does feel in many ways like a hinge day, which is to say we're going down one of two very different paths by perhaps tomorrow morning.
Yes, and that's what, if historians in the future are allowed to write books, and by the way, that question is open this morning, and if people are allowed to go on television and say what they think in the future, which again, that question is open this morning, in the future, historians are going to look back on this day and say, this is the day that America made a choice between freedom and democracy on one side and authoritarianism and dictatorship.
Rachel Maddow then went on to suggest Kamala Harris cancel Elon Musk's government contracts if she was to win.
Even if Trump doesn't win, the Defense Department and NASA are going to need a new arrangement for all their rockets and for all the multi-billion-dollar contracts Elon Musk's companies have with the U.S. government. The U.S. government is going to have to either, unwind from all of those contracts, or Elon Musk's companies are going to have to unwind from him. This is an untenable reality in national security terms, now that we know what we know about Elon Musk.
MSNBC host Andrea Mitchell then went on to say men aren't voting for Kamala because she is a woman.
Let's talk about gender writ broadly, though. Is there certainly has historically been, and is there, against her case for election, which will rely heavily on women, and the fact that there are more women voters in the United States than men, is that running into headwinds because there are a lot of men who just simply, black and white, men who just simply don't trust a woman to be, chief executive, commander-in-chief. They just don't want to vote for a woman.
This commentator slammed the take, saying MSNBC's Andrea Mitchell says that men are not voting for Kamala Harris because they hate women. It is the opposite. Men are voting for Trump because they love and want to protect women. CNN host also went into overdrive trying to justify Kamala's disastrous campaign performance.
Donald Trump has been running for 2 years. Kamala Harris has been running for 107 days. So one of my big questions is, particularly with her candidacy, is whether that was just enough time to introduce herself to the country and to candidates who were dead set on voting for a Democrat, weren't so sure about him, or whether she could have used a little bit more time.
This commentator mocked the exchange, saying CNN says Kamala didn't have enough time to introduce herself to the country. She's been in office for 4 years and she still stands by the decision the Biden-Harris admin made during the past 4 years. The meltdowns come as CNN has just released an early exit poll that spells disaster for Kamala Harris.
Said, let's look at the numbers on the mood of the country. It's a pretty dour mood in terms of the way people feel things are going in the United States. Nationally, only 7% of voters say they're enthusiastic. 19% say they're satisfied. Look at these numbers. 43% dissatisfied, 29% angry, 72% of the electorate nationally say they're dissatisfied or angry. What about America's best days, we ask? Are they in the future or are they in the past? 61% of voters in this election across the country say America's best days are ahead of the country. 6 in 10 say so. 34% say the best days are in the past. And finally, President Joe Biden's approval rating, it's at 41% in these early preliminary exit poll findings. 58% of voters in this election across the country nationally disapprove of the way that the incumbent Democratic president is doing his job, Jake.
And even the CNN panelist was forced to admit the reality of the situation.
I don't know how that's
I got to say, I think that's putting the best spin on it. I think when you see current voters saying that by a 3-to-1 margin that they are dissatisfied with the country.
Or angry, dissatisfied or angry.
Or angry. I got to say, I think that that's with the present conditions in the country. I mean, in conventional terms, it would be a miracle that Kamala Harris could win with that kind of headwind, and also with a president. Remember, she was part of the administration. The Biden-Harris administration was 41% approved, 58% disapproved. This isn't even close to the 50%.
But I want to be
traditionally. Let me just finish my point. Which is just that if she is able to overcome those numbers and still win this election, then she has done a remarkable job of somehow separating herself that she's part of the solution and not part of the problem.
Sky News contributor Josh Hammer agrees, saying it would be a miracle if Kamala Harris was to win.
This dropped very shortly before you and I came on air. I actually had it on live right here in my home office. I was watching CNN live at that time. And, you know, Chris Wallace, formerly the Fox News anchor, now he's on CNN, gets on there and he says in real time, looking at this data, he's poring over the numbers, looking down at his paper, and he says, you know, looking at this, I think Kamala Harris will basically need a miracle to win. I'm paraphrasing closely, but that basically is what Chris Wallace just said. And you know, immediately the other CNN anchors are like, oh my God, no, let's not go there yet. But they're basically already playing the blame game, and the very first votes have actually not already been cast yet. We've literally just seen the exit polling data. But Chris Wallace is basically right there, where you have 70 to 75% of Americans who say that they are dissatisfied or outright angry. They are livid at the current direction of the country. And by the way, who can blame them? I very much share in that particular antipathy bordering on outright anger. But when you have that kind of number, it actually would be a miracle if Democrats can win. Right now, Americans have a 28% approval rating. It depends on the poll, but 28% of Americans say that the country is on the right track. So maybe 35% of Americans, a little closer to that, say that they actually approve of Joe Biden's time in office right now. The numbers, no matter how you slice or dice it, are very, very low. The incumbent party just does not win American elections given that kind of data. Now, is Donald Trump a uniquely hated phenomenon such that Democrats can still prevail in light of those historical headwinds? The media would like to have you think so, based on the fact that he has already won one presidential election and came shockingly close to winning another 4 years ago. I think that he probably is not. Again, I think he's likely headed towards victory tonight.
And Sky News US political analyst Joe Hockey agrees, saying Trump is polling higher than he did against Clinton and Biden, which bodes well for his election chances.
Donald Trump, as of today, is polling higher than he ever did against Hillary Clinton or Joe Biden. He's actually polling higher. It's never been this close. I still feel that there is a shy Trump voter out there that has not disclosed their vote to any pollsters. I still feel they're out there, and they're the ones that, even though they don't like his rhetoric, and don't like the way he behaves. They're voting for him because they think he's going to deliver a stronger economy.